Good morning. I'm speaking to you from Star Island, and I begin this sermon with the first half of a poem by Stanley Kunitz entitled The Layers. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was, though some principle of being abides from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites, over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? When I was 10 years old, in the middle of 5th grade, we moved from upstate New York to Virginia. My father had taken a job in the D.C. area. For him, it was a wonderful opportunity. For me, it was misery. I had a beloved 5th grade class. My teacher was genial and interesting and read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to us each afternoon while we sat on a braided rug listening. My classmates included 4 deaf students and their interpreters, so we got to learn to sing and sign "You Light Up My Life." I was the caregiver for the beloved class garter snake. To top it all off, I was granted the dream opportunity to read announcements in support of the MS Readathon over the school intercom, my earliest activism on behalf of multiple sclerosis research. The moving truck appeared as a gaping darkness that swallowed not only my belongings, but the whole cloth of my life. I was that kid who saved everything. The movers peered into a Gerber baby food jar lined with yellow cotton and exclaimed, "She even saved her baby teeth." But I couldn't pack my school or friends or the big tree outside the living room window where I watched clouds drift and believed I saw the world turning, and take these with me. Around this same time, my great-grandmother died. She had been a touchstone. She belonged to me. We landed in a nice Virginia neighborhood with a stream perfect for creek walking and kids my age. We found a great Girl Scout troop, and unbeknownst to my parents, every night for a year and a half, I cried myself to sleep. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? My mantra from then on was, I hate change. Until, at age 16, I discovered the 11th chapter of the Tao Te Ching. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub, that chapter reads. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. I started to wonder, are there uses for all these holes inside of me? Are there uses for the holes inside us all? I'm not someone who believes that everything happens for a reason, nor that God or the universe doesn't give us more than we can handle. Sometimes the universe doles out more loss and difficulty than we can handle with anything approaching equanimity. One friend incurred mental illness that became permanent disability from the physical and non-physical impacts of serving in the U.S. military. Another friend, who was transgendered, took her life after facing discrimination in employment and being physically attacked. When I was in my 30s, 22 people I knew died in 18 months. I remember calling my grandmother and saying, "Grandma, this isn't even a country with war on its own soil. How much suffering is the human heart supposed to take? And my grandmother, known by all in her community as deeply loving and always encouraging, replied honestly, "Wait till you're old and all your friends are gone." So it is not that I want holes in my life, or any lives, as openings to use or virtue, but it has been my experience that how we continue most often comes out of how we use and make meaning with and for what happens to us. If we are going to have those holes, what uses may we find for them? As Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, and author of Man's Search for Meaning, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. A human being is a deciding being." 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. How might a hole in our being move us forward along our journeys? Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. What can we now hold that we could not hold before? When I worked as a hospice chaplain, the usefulness of the holes inside me was suddenly illuminated. Most of my patients had Alzheimer's or dementia. I did not have much experience with these illnesses beyond a brief training, and I never knew who or how my patients would be when I arrived, but I loved them tremendously. No matter where they were in the course of their disease, even when they were in pain, with all the loss they and their families sustained, I came away from each visit feeling grateful for their beauty. Except for one woman, Mary. I had been told by our volunteer coordinator that Mary's volunteer had become too depressed by her inability to reach or help Mary and had quit. When I met Mary, I understood. I spoke with her. I tried holding her hand. I asked whether she might like a prayer, to which she whispered hoarsely and vehemently, "No," the only word I heard her speak. I brought the photos from her bureau and held them close in her line of sight. She had been beautiful and vibrant, elegant and adventuresome. Now, at age 75, she was immensely thin, with gray wispy hair and missing teeth. As she looked at these photos of her earlier life, her expression changed. Knowledge came into her eyes. I realized, unlike some of our patients when they reach this stage of the disease, Mary knows. She knew what she had lost. I felt like weeping, and later at home I did. This was cruel of life. This kind of loss was cruelty. Many of you may be familiar with the research on mirror neurons, which allow us to make sense of others' reactions and emotional states. Though Mary barely moved, I could suddenly feel her feelings. She had a friend who visited with his dog, and for him she would turn and eat. I knew she could still receive, but I did not know what or how to give. I had begun to learn to read her and her body language, very slight variations of movement or expression. They told me that sheer accompaniment and presence meant little, if anything, to her. She turned her face away. I was thrust down into the hole inside me, the one that had lost so many people, so many loves. It felt empty in there at first. It felt cold and lonely. The emptiness was overwhelming. I found myself singing Amazing Grace, but with the lines unfinished. I once was lost, but now, what? And I remembered that her room contained many CDs. The next time I visited the memory care residence where Mary lived, I found her sitting in her wheelchair in the garden room. She was staring at nothing. I sat down and I started to sing. As I sang Amazing Grace, she lifted her head and turned toward me. Her gaze, usually vague, had a sudden intense focus. Tears came into the corners of her eyes. One ran down her cheek. We did not take our eyes off one another for the full hour that I sat there and sang. I could not wait to visit her again. Each time she became alert, alive, awake, and she woke me up. I sang. I played her a 7-minute Ella Fitzgerald video on my phone screen while she watched intently. Now, when I would talk with her, she would more than tolerate me. I knew she had loved France, and I found her a massage volunteer who was French, who could gently tend her body. On their introductory visit, I brought over a photo from the bureau. Her volunteer said, "Oh, wait, I recognize these gargoyles. Do you think they could be?" And she named a cathedral. Mary, who had not spoken in months other than to say no, whispered hoarsely, "It could be." In his song Anthem, Leonard Cohen famously sings, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." I love that song. I love that the light gets us into us through our imperfections. But I want to add to it, there is a hole in everyone, in every one of us, and that's where the light comes out. Even in our darkest moments, our light may reach another. Viktor Frankl said, "What is to give light must endure burning." He also said, "The salvation of man is through love and in love." Stanley Kunitz's poem, The Layers, concludes this way. In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me, "Live in the layers, not on the litter." Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. Mary's light illuminated and still illumines me. In her presence, the losses of homes, family members, and friends, the irrevocable changes receded. She was the only person who mattered. Her life was not easy, and She was love. We both were love. We were conduits and energy. We were still creating. We are not done with our changes.